To play, Blast the Radio. Live video available on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. The number to call or text is 613-413-2217. And now, telling it like it is, here's Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. As usual, folks, absolutely anything you want to discuss. If there's any topic that you think deserves a public airing, something you'd like to talk about, something that concerns you, and as I've said before, there's something that you would like me to research, let us know. Either give us a call or text or email or whatever. John, once again, how do people get in touch with us?
We have got a lot of ways for you to get in touch with us. You can follow Lowell on Facebook. You can text and call the following number, 613-413-2217. We're on Twitch as well, following your comments in real time. And when I see them, I'll give them a like, and that lets you know that they're on my list to try and get on the air to Lowell. Again, 613-413-2217.
So do it now, folks, before Bill C-10 comes into effect, and we're all shut down, okay? All you liberals out there, you don't want me on the air. You don't want people objecting in any way to this prime minister, so you're doing everything you can to shut us up. So you're going to pass Bill C-10, and apparently most liberals out there think this is just great. It's called non-freedom of speech, but that's another issue. This whole business of prime ministerial apologies, what's your view here? Any of this concerning you? The latest, of course, is Italian Canadians who were interned during the Second World War. And, of course, demands everywhere from just about everybody for what happened in residential schools. But what do you think? Have you done any thinking about this? Do you accept any personal responsibility for any of this? I mean, this occurred long before you were born. You had no control over something that happened 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. What's your view here? What do you think? Are we Canadians collectively guilty of anything in any of these events? I sometimes wonder if all of this angst, this guilt over things over which we had no control is healthy. We are a great nation. We are a great people. We are very liberal here. We have open arms. We have, on a per capita basis, more immigrants, more welcomed in this country than any other country in the world. And yet, if you listen sometimes, you think, my God, we're Satan reincarnate. We are not. And I just wonder how healthy it is. I want to tell you that there's a great deal of guilt being taught to our kids in class. I mean, the history lesson is just filled with all of the supposedly collective guilt we have over the residential schools. Maybe there is a collective guilt. I'd like to hear what you have to say. There's a very interesting letter to the editor of the Ottawa Sun today. And I'm going to read it to you. And you may have seen it yourself. And I'd like your feelings on this. I'd like your comments on this. It's entitled, this is Letters to the Editor of the Ottawa Sun today. This particular letter is entitled, Apology Not Accepted. Quote, read, that was wrong. PM sorry for WW2 internment of Italian Canucks, May 28th. He goes on to write, there comes a time when apologizing becomes hollow and lacks sincerity. Compared to the boy who cried wolf one too many times. What bothers me is Justin Trudeau apologizing on behalf of all Canadians. Can someone explain to me and all the other Canadians just what we did wrong to warrant an apology? We did nothing wrong. What we should have done is apologize on behalf of the government. They are the ones directly responsible for the problems covered under Trudeau's mea culpas. If my memory of history is correct, Japanese and Italian internment during the Second World War was under the Liberals' watch. The residential school problem could have been dealt with in the mid to late 1980s. Remember, Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister as of 1968 after Lester Pearson retired, and Jacques Chrétien was Minister of Indian Affairs as of 1968. I think they were Liberals. Let's leave the military and the RCMP for another time. Maybe the Liberal Party of Canada should be the ones to apologize. Signed, Michael Perro. What do you think? Has he got a point there? Has he got a point? Should we Canadians, who played no part in any of this, be included in the apologies? There's a very interesting video. I forget if it's a video or a still picture I saw somewhere, and for the life of me, I can't remember where. You may be able to straighten me out on this, but it features a picture of two little girls. One girl is obviously Caucasian, white. The other little girl is Asian. The caption under the Caucasian little girl says, "She should no more be blamed for the residential schools than the little Asian girl should be blamed for Pearl Harbor." Very interesting observation. There is one thing I've got to point out with Michael Perro's letter to the editor. While it is true the Liberals were in power for most of the time the residential schools were in operation, and for that matter, it was Liberals in power when Japanese and Italian Canadians were sent to those camps. But in fact, the Diefenbaker Conservative government was in charge for several years during residential schools, and they did nothing either. But for the most part, Michael is correct. Liberals were the government in power for most of that time. It was also, by the way, Liberal governments that imposed the so-called Chinese Exclusion Act of 1923. Canadian government under Mackenzie King in 1923 passed an act in Parliament essentially forbidding all immigration from China. We did not want Chinese. It was also Mackenzie King, by the way, who turned down, you may remember, 1939, 907 Jewish refugees trying to flee from Nazi Germany and other parts of Europe, arrived on our doorstep. They wanted to come into Canada. This was 907 Jewish refugees. 1939, Mackenzie King, the Liberal government of the day, turned them away. Sadly, 294 of them later died in various Nazi concentration camps. By the way, I forgot to mention that the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1923, it was Stephen Harper who apologized for that one. But for the most part, it's been Liberal governments that have been responsible. But the question remains, do we Canadians, because it's all very well, they talk about Canada per se, but Canada is not mountains and streams and lakes and forests. Canada is Canadians, people, you and I. Should we collectively, as Canadians, be held responsible for any of these things when the fact is that most of it happened, perhaps in most cases all of it happened, without any of us knowing anything about it? When you stop and think about it, the little 4-year-old girl playing in the playground, what responsibility does she have for what happened to Chinese, Japanese, Italians during the war? What responsibility does she have, or you or I have, for what happened in the residential schools? I think the Catholic Church has got to take a lot of responsibility, but I mean, parishioners of the Catholic Church today, were they responsible? Or is it the church as the institution? I'm not denying that there shouldn't be an apology, but should the apology be on behalf of the people who imposed these things, or on behalf of you and I who had nothing to do with it? That's the question. Should we Canadians collectively be held responsible for any of that? Should Trudeau or anyone be apologizing on your behalf? What do you think? John, we got any reaction as yet?
It's starting to come in now on Facebook and on Twitch. And again, we'd love your phone calls, 613-413-2217. So Terry says, I guess we sunk the Titanic also. Joshua, leave it to Terry.
No, Harper sunk the Titanic, okay? Let's get that straight. That was Stephen Harper's responsibility.
How so?
Go ahead.
I won't even ask how. Joshua says there's lots of indoctrination going on in schools. Eric says, I feel it is blown up by our Liberals as a distraction for their boondoggles. Lisa, referring to the letter to the editor, says, yes, he does have a point. And Dean says, I'm tired of all this Canada bashing. Yes, we have black marks on our history, but much of this happened before many of us were born. Every country has done nasty things. If Canada is so bad, name one other country right now which is a better place to live in.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, if it was such a bad company, we wouldn't have tens of thousands, how about tens of millions of people just gladly rush here tomorrow. I mean, if we were open our borders totally and say, just come in, you're all welcome, we would be inundated with millions of people. It's one of the few countries in the world that most people, certainly in third world nations, would love to come to. But every nation has black marks on its history. But we also have to keep in mind that many of these things were done with a different atmosphere. Even the way, when you examine the way we treated children, when I grew up, I'm 84, almost 85 now. It was a different world for children. We didn't have nearly the respect. Little children were to be seen and not heard. And spankings were very, very common. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. What I'm saying is it was a different attitude. We have evolved as a society. We have evolved. And it's very difficult to gauge a past culture, if you like, a different way of looking at things. It was just a different world then. So the question, obviously much of what, not everything, but much of what happened to residential schools was wrong. But whose fault is it? Let me ask you this, you personally, search your heart now. Be honest. You can be honest here. Do you accept any personal responsibility for, let's say, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Chinese head tax, the internment of thousands of Japanese Canadians, the internment of a few thousand Italian Canadians during the Second World War? Hey, I grew up during the war. We were deadly afraid. In the early days of the war, there was every indication we were going to lose the war. God knows, we would have the jackboots stomping on our backs at any time. Just for those of you who aren't aware of it, I remember, for example, we were all afraid to eat canned salmon. Do you know why? Because there was a rumor that the Japanese on the West Coast, Japanese Canadians, had inserted broken glass. This was the widely held belief. That's how afraid we were. And it's all very well to say, well, how foolish can you be? But it was a different time. Okay, Jace is on the line. Go ahead, Jace.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Just because it's a different time doesn't absolve us of what has happened.
Do you accept personal responsibility? What did you do wrong, Jace? Are you a bad person?
Do anything. Hang on. Sure, Lowell, I'm a bad person. Lowell, we, the Canadian people, elect the governments to represent us, to do things on our behalf, to run the country, to govern us, to tax us, to plan for the future. So we, the Canadian people, not me, not you, we owe a number of people an apology. And
so excuse me, Jace, I have to get this straight, sir. You voted for Sir John A. Macdonald?
No, most certainly not.
Well, then why should I be responsible for something he did, or you?
We, as Canadians.
No, but I'm taking your own argument. You say, well, we voted, but if you voted for, say, John A. Macdonald, then go ahead and accept some responsibility.
So you accept no responsibility for anybody that you didn't vote for?
I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. Everything that I've done in this country, I've done with the best of intentions.
Everybody has done everything with the best of intentions.
Why should Justin Trudeau apologize on my behalf for anything?
Well, the federal government takes action based on what we, the people, think. I'm not talking about the current one.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jace. Did you vote for Mackenzie King?
No, sir.
So why should you accept any responsibility for what he did?
Did you vote for Pierre Trudeau?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Foolishly, but well, I did, yeah. Once.
Yeah. Well, you also attempted to run for him, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
68. Yeah. Well, you can run around in circles all day long, but like bad things were done to Native populations, and we need to solve it, and we need to fix it. And if an apology is going
I'm not
to have
denying
an effect,
that. But let me. I'm not denying that. But it would seem to me that instead of, blaming me and you and little 4-year-old kids for something that happened 100 years ago, that we might be better to spend our time insisting that the government do things right today, like installing some water on the reserves.
No, I'm 100% with you on doing that, Lowell. 100%.
Yeah.
We should have.
But I just think that we but as long as we can keep bashing ourselves, would you not agree, Jace, that this is a pretty damn good country?
You know what? I think it is a wonderful country, and we've always tried to keep it a wonderful country. Unfortunately, we've done some bad things in the past, and in hindsight, because hindsight is the great equalizer, some of the things that we did were kind of shitty. So
wait, excuse me. I didn't. Excuse me. Hold it. Don't blame me. I didn't do it. Okay. I didn't do it. I didn't vote for Mackenzie. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, sir, that if I had been alive when Mackenzie, well, I was 3 years old when Mackenzie King refused to allow 907 Jews into this country. If I had been me doing an open line show, I would have been all over that, sir. I would have called him every friggin' name in the book. I'm going to tell you right now that if I had my way, those Jews would be in this country.
100%. Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
And I'm just curious, like, what's the first prime minister you voted for, or what's the first federal election that you voted in?
That's a very good question. Probably, I
forget, sir.
Probably Lester Pearson.
Okay. So then anything from that time and that time forward, you have some responsibility in, because you voted for a prime minister to run the country. Whether your candidate won or not, you were part of the Canadian people that did these things. If
I had known what they were doing to children in the residential schools, I would have done everything in my power to stop it. And for me or anybody else who feels the same as I to now be somehow blamed for this, I don't even think it's fair. I did nothing wrong. Had I known and been in a position to do anything, I would have done everything in my power.
Okay.
So why should Trudeau be up there now apologizing on my behalf? I don't need him to apologize. I didn't do anything wrong.
Lowell, let me get something.
Sure.
The Canadian military was doing experiments on Indigenous children at the residential schools all the way up to the early 70s. As late as 1971 and 72, the Canadian military was doing testing.
What's your evidence for that? I think you're passing on rumors here. What's your evidence for that, Jason?
Oh, my goodness.
Really? Where's that been reported? Give me the source of that.
Global News. I'll look it up. I'll send it to you. Not a problem. Done.
Would you do that? Because that's news to me.
Okay.
I'll tell you this, though. I'll tell you something that I do know, and that is that the Canadian government was carrying out various chemical experiments on its own soldiers, and my uncle Ken, who is now deceased, was one of them. I do know that. But as far as carrying out these...
Let me ask you a question, though.
Sure.
What should we do to make this right? Because you and I and the rest of the people in Canada have an opportunity today
to
fix this.
But instead of spending all of this time worrying and calling ourselves all sorts of names for something over which we had no control and no knowledge, what we should be doing is insisting, as I have done repeatedly, and I hope you have, that they treat natives properly, that we get water into the dam reserves, that these people be given some hope, be given a chance at a decent life, for God's sake. That's what we should be doing. Here we are. Jace, a very intelligent guy. I'm reasonably intelligent. And what are we doing? We're debating, what happened 150 years ago. Let's deal with the problems today. Solve the damn problems today. Mistakes were made yesterday. Good. Okay, fine. That was wrong. Let's get on with life today. But as long as we keep telling ourselves how bad we are, I have to tell you something. If you keep telling a child that they're bad, you know what? They probably will end up bad.
Well,
that's only human nature. Would you agree with me?
Behavior.
Excuse me, Jace, just a minute. I'll give you all kinds of time. Is it not true that if you continually tell a child he, she is bad, there's a good chance they'll end up bad?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy to constantly bash Canadians.
I don't think so either. Hang on. We need to come to some kind of final solution to incorporate us into the Aboriginal and Indigenous communities and them into ours. And I'm not talking about making them
You know what? You're absolutely right. Go up and help them dig a well. Go to one of the reserves. If you're so all fired anxious, I'm challenging you. You go up. You show them how to dig a well.
Well, as soon as my business is making enough money, I'm going to be helped.
Pardon?
No. I'm quite willing to literally put it on the line. Once my business is doing okay again, I'm quite willing to support that financially.
But you got to look after number one first, right?
Well, I have to pay the mortgage. There's a pandemic going on, right?
I understand.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Sir Johnny MacDonald.
Yeah.
Let's say he was a father of Confederation. Let's say he did all sorts of good things, but let's say he did some bad things too.
Yep.
Why do we need to rename the Ottawa Western Parkway after him?
Because we wouldn't have Canada without him.
We've already got a statue. We've already got a building. We've already got a school. We've already got all sorts of stuff.
Jace?
Why can't we name it after a traditional Indigenous trade route? Why can't we?
Can I ask you something? What the hell difference does that make? Why are we arguing over the naming of a freaking school? Why? I mean, the real debate. You dealt with it briefly. Let's deal with the real problems. Renaming the parkway is not going to help Native Indians, is it? Not going to help Native Aboriginal, is it? Eh? Is it? You explain to me how tearing down Sir Johnny's statue is going to help people. I don't
think the statue. I don't think we should tear down the statue.
You know what? Yeah, exercise. Jace, you're a great guy, Jace. I'll enjoy debating you, but let's deal with the real problem. Let's fix the problems.
The real problem is we
can't fix what happened yesterday. Yesterday is yesterday. Today is today. Let's fix what we can today.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Thank you. Got to move on here, Jason. Phone me anytime. You're very good. Thank you. I'll tell you who else is really, really good, and that is Shields in Pakenham. Now, I still get calls from people saying, "Oh, wait a minute, Shields in Pakenham. It's a tiny little village. It's a beautiful little village. There's no question about it. But what you've got, it's a small store on the main street in Pakenham. Been there since 1947, but they have a huge warehouse, absolutely jammed with all the latest in appliances of all kinds. If you don't believe me, just go to the website. Have a look at the website, Shields, SCHEELS.ca. You will see there's some tremendous specials right now, particularly on Frigidaire. You can save up to $1,200. Not only that, they'll have with 99% certainty in your house within 2 or 3 days. Shields, folks, they're good. They're local. Keep your money local. Not only that, you'll probably save some money. Shields. Text. Yes, John. Text coming in.
613-413-2217. A text from Barry who says, Lowell, I think we are guilty of letting Manchurian candidate Prime Minister get away with apologizing and giving away $10.5 million to a known terrorist in Omar Khadr. Thanks to media payoffs, this is not an issue. Trudeau giving away our tax money like it's his own. Long Point Diver is on Twitch who says, we are responsible for the actions at the moment. We are not holding the churches responsible or the individuals who dealt with these atrocities. Lisa says, seems like Trudeau's default response to any disaster is, I speak for all Canadians. Well, she says, he does not speak for me. Lori says, Lowell, you got it right. We don't live like that. We are good people. An email from Lisa to lowell@blasttheradio.com. Lisa says, I'm fed up with apology after apology for things of the past, long past. What's done is done, can't go back. Tearing down buildings, statues, and monuments does not solve a thing. All that is a token symbolism. They do that to negate doing anything and to ease someone else's conscience. Sorry, Lisa, muddling through that for you. Peter says the past is the past and cannot be changed, but we can do better now in these times. It's a great country.
Yep.
We just have to keep fighting for our freedoms against people like Trudeau and his minions, like pushing C-10 without further debate today, and judges allowing closures ongoing in Alberta of churches. Lynn says, we cannot make the past right. We can only learn from these mistakes and do better. Yes, clean water for natives. And Hazel says, I agree, we are not individually responsible for the schools. It needs to be fixed, and saying sorry eventually means nothing. Besides, what about the $3 billion that has already been spent?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Some good texts. I think you're seeing the point that I'm trying to make here. I'm not saying that it wasn't wrong. I'm not saying that somebody shouldn't apologize, but it seems to me that the people who are responsible should be the ones apologizing, if at all. And I'm not responsible, nor are you, unless you were directly involved. And I had a Jace who's very intelligent. I mean, I stopped him cold when he suggested that, well, you voted, and I voted, so you use your responsibility. I didn't vote for Sir John A., and I didn't vote for Mackenzie Kane, nor did you. On a personal note, okay, I have a couple of other things here. We are now a two-shotter family here, okay? all three of us now have 2 doses of vaccine. Thank goodness. The third member just got theirs this morning. And I'm very happy, but I'm also relieved because information is coming to the fore, which I don't think we knew before. And that is that, particularly with this new mutation, the so-called Delta, the one that's ravaging India, that apparently with the first shot, it's only 30 to 40% effective. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I was 2 or 3 days ago, when a couple of the doctors being interviewed on CTV said, yeah, the one shot with the mutation, it's only 30 to 40% effective. You've got to have, but with 2 shots, it's about 90% effective, maybe a bit more. I just wonder if we had known this when the decision was first made. And by the way, this was a decision made by all provinces and the federal government, because the federal government told us that it was quite safe, that there would be 4 months delay. They didn't tell us that first shot only protected us 30 to 40%. That's why we're still in lockdown in this country, while most other Western nations are now opening up or opened up almost entirely. Do you know that even today, after all this this big new, second shot, do you know what percentage of Canadians, as of this morning, are fully protected, have both shots? Do you know what percentage? 7.5%. We don't even have 10% of our population fully vaccinated. You wonder why there are still outbreaks? I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but there has been an outbreak at the Civic Hospital. I'm not sure if it's the entire hospital or just one unit, but I know that people in that hospital are quarantined there for 2 solid weeks. And I must also tell you, there has been an outbreak at the Briere, and people are quarantined there for 2 weeks. This is in our hospitals. So that it's not over. And one of the reasons is that in almost every case, these people have had 1 shot, but it only gives 30 to 40% protection. I don't know if they lied to us. Of course, the big thing was Trudeau wanted to be able to say, we got 70% of our population vaccinated. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're only 30 or 40% protected, I don't think you're vaccinated. 7.5% are fully vaccinated in this country today, 6 months after the vaccination program began. I'm not going to let up on this son of a biscuit box. All right, I have to get a word in here for my other sponsor, Centennial Glass. When you're talking about good people, those are good people. I know them at Centennial Glass. I've worked with them. I've been back in the shops. I've interviewed several of them. I've sat in on meetings, etc. They're good people, honest people. They really want to do what's right, and they do what's right. They have a very, very fine reputation. They deal with large hotels, large apartment buildings, but they really enjoy, and they'll tell you, they really enjoy working with ordinary homeowners. Windows, stores, patios, custom-made glass furniture. This is the big thing now, custom-made glass furniture. Glass banisters, beautiful, beautiful. Even if it's just a screen repair. Centennial Glass. There for you there on Industrial Avenue in Ottawa and in good old Renfrew. John, we have some more texts here.
We've got 4 to wrap up the show, Lowell, including one at 613-413-2217.
Fire away, my boy. Fire away.
We've given or paid Canadian Native Indians hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 50 years, says Bruce.
How about billions?
And says no point in installing water treatment plants on reserves and not training them on how to use and maintain them. Millions of dollars spent with no results. Kevin says, why do we have to pay for water wells? If I want to build a house on a lake up north, I would have to pay for my own well. We give billions of dollars to native bands, so why are they not building the wells themselves? And Kevin adds, nope, that's a repeat. I apologize. There you go. So we had 3.
Thank you very much. Listen, folks, good response today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jason, my boy, you're ready to give me a call anytime. Next time, just maybe have a little better argument, okay? Thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow.
Lowell Green, live on blasttheradio.com. Show info and links at